Hello and welcome. You are tuned in to Community Chat. My name is Kevin Tachi, and I will be your host for this particular segment. What do we do here at Community Chat? The idea of the show is to better inform you about some of the things that are going on in and around your community. Today is no exception. Joining us today, we have two great guests, and we are going to talk a little bit about public transportation and is it fair and equitable for all, and a piece of legislation that you should be aware of. Joining us furthest away is Collique Williams. He is a community organizer for the Community Labor United. Collique, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And we have Raena Camacho. Raena is with Coalition for Social Justice, and she's the coordinator, grassroots coordinator for the city of Brockton.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us.
So we'll start with you, Raena. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what do you do for the Coalition for Social Justice?
Like you said, my name is Raena Camacho. I am the Brockton North Grassroots Coordinator for the Coalition of Social Justice. And at the Coalition, we advocate for social equity and economic empowerment for BIPOC communities, low-income communities, urban communities, and things of that nature. So as the coordinator, I'm in the middle of it all.
You are, figuratively and especially for this conversation.
There you go.
Collique, tell us a little bit about Community Labor United.
So again, my name is Collique Williams. I'm a community organizer at Community Labor United. Community Labor United is an organization that brings together labor unions, brings together community groups to essentially come together and fight for what affects both sides. The idea right now is that we are working on transit, making sure that transit is going to be affordable, equitable, and accessible for all folks that need to ride. To that degree, we've brought together folks in the Public Transit Public Good Coalition to really push that.
I'll ask this, maybe it's more of a rhetorical question or just an opportunity to start the conversation. That is, are the fares equitable and fair for those who need to take public transportation to their employment? Collique?
So there are places and spaces where the fare is, more equitable. So we've fought for these places and spaces, right? So for instance, there's a youth pass that works for any young person from the age of, I want to say 12 to 18 to 24. Because most students get a student pass, but if you're a young person that's graduated from high school, you still need maybe some help in order to afford the T as you get your life together, as you're doing any program. There's that option. You prove that you're in need and they say, okay, here's your discounted fare. There's a discounted fare for seniors, right? You turn 65 or whatever the age is, and now they're okay, you're now on a fixed income, you have a need, here is your discounted fare as a senior. There's no such thing for that for those folks that are in the middle, that are going to work every day, that are trying to figure out their lives, that are maybe going to school or trying to be in a program, that need help, and especially now during this time as prices of everything else are going up, folks definitely need a break right now.
You're playing off of what Collique says. Talk to us about everything going up and
well,
what inflation's, how it's hurting the folks who don't have the funding.
I think low-income riders struggle to utilize the MBTA as well as RTA, and we know that the rides have risen quicker than inflation. And this really affects low-income families, it affects students, it affects our elderly, it affects blue-collar workers, it even affects white-collar workers. I ran into a young mom the other day who works at McDonald's, and because there's been so many shifts in the system, she's unable to make some of her rides, and per day she's spending $60, $30 in an Uber there, $30 in an Uber back. And that might not sound like a lot of money to most folks, but when you're on a tight budget, and you have children to feed and you have bills to pay, it becomes compromising. People shouldn't have to choose between getting to work and eating, and like I said, it affects a lot of communities, and that's something that we have to really take into consideration. we want to be able to put money back into the pockets of these folks and not take away.
So what exactly does this piece of legislation, it's House Bill number 4481, Collique, what would this piece of legislation seek to do? Is this just a stopgap measure?
No, what this legislation seeks to do is to, first and foremost, for the MBTA, for them to create a low-income fair in partnership with, Department of Health and Human Services, to make sure that they can verify who needs access to this, and to go ahead and to run a low-income fair program. And then for folks that use the rest of the regional transit authorities, or other RTAs, as we tend to call them, for them to be able to figure out if they need a low-income fare or if they need free fare. For the RTAs, they're in a little bit different situation than the MBTA. Some of their municipalities, it wouldn't make sense for them to do a low-income fare. They've run the numbers and they've done the studies, and they're so like, in the amount of it costs to do admin for it, we might as well make it fare free, and it would still cost. It'll be cheaper.
I think they get 25 cents per dollar. I think they said.
Yep. I know it's different for different RTAs, so I feel like over in New Bedford, Fall River, it's actually cheaper for them to go fare free, and then others, it might look a little bit different, but we want them to be able to have the autonomy to go ahead and being like, okay, this is actually what works for us in the RTAs, and this is what we're going to go with. Versus the MBTA, we know that it's the largest of our transit systems, and their low-income fare would be the next logical step for them.
So when I'm thinking about a regional transit authority or an RTA, would BAT or the Brockton Area Transit qualify?
Absolutely. And I just want to say too that our legislature has passed the low-income fare legislation last year. Unfortunately, it was vetoed, and we're just looking to move swiftly this year so that things like that don't happen, and really be on top of things so that we have better results within our communities.
Now, is this a standalone piece of legislation, or is this possible it may be tied to a greater bill?
So it is, 4481 is itself a standalone, but we have crafted language to go into our, the legislation is looking at right now, which is a transportation bond bill. So we have support from some senators and representatives to put that language into an amendment for the bond bill, and hopefully we can get that passed. It was the same vehicle that we actually did try to pass last session, that was unfortunately vetoed by the governor with his pocket veto at the end of the year. So we want to make sure that we can, try to make sure that we get that in sooner rather than later.
But we did see great support in House and Senate as well.
Now, but knowing that it was vetoed by the governor, how does that? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, it affects us terribly. We have to make sure that we're all on the same page when we're talking about issues that really affect our communities. If a young man can't make it to work, that person's then fired. That person doesn't have a job. That person can't feed their families. That person potentially is evicted. So small decisions really do affect the whole. So we have to make sure that we're telling the right stories. We're getting them to understand what's going on in our communities so that we can get the support that we need.
What else do we need to know about this piece of legislation? And just to follow up, is what would you hope would come of it from like a conversation like this? Are you hoping that folks who tuned in might reach out to their local state reps and state senators? Hey,
that's what it's all about, right? And you can go to publictransitpublicgood.org and sign the petition that we have up there. And yeah, make sure you make a call to your legislators and make sure that this gets pushed through.
They need to know that this is something that, that the public wants and public needs. There's been studies that have polls that have come out saying 83% of Massachusetts folks are in favor of a low-income fare. The writing is there. We need to make sure that they can hear it. So as many voices as that can, call, write, email your legislators, make sure your senators and your reps know that a low-income fare is important, and that it needs to pass this session, as well as writing into the governor and letting him know that it is something important that shouldn't be vetoed. That's what's going to turn the tide for this thing.
So let's say it does. It is taken care of before the end of this month. Again, we are in July. What happens? How long is this good for? Is it good for just the fiscal year?
So it would be what do you call it? We're looking for this to be a new program, and a whole program. So in a similar way that we talked about the youth pass and the senior pass, we would have this. So it's not something that would start and go away. It's something that would be a new permanent, what do you call it, rider discount.
A new normal.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. Anything else we haven't touched upon in regards to this piece of legislation, or at least making folks aware of its importance, that it is somehow passed? Because where is it right now? Is it in committee right now, or where does it stand?
So unfortunately, the House did put, what do you call it? There was an amendment and that didn't pass in the House, but that doesn't mean that's the end of the story.
Okay.
So the Senate is working on it. They'll probably pick it up in the next week or so. Folks are probably still vacationing right now. Mm-hmm. But they'll pick it up next week or so, and they'll move from there. So the transportation.
It is in Ways and Means.
So our current bill, 4481, is sitting in Ways and Means in terms of the amendment going into the transportation bond bill, which is what's the vehicle that's in front of our legislators right now. They'll make decisions on that next week.
Now, have you had a chance to go up to the State House and discuss this, or at least speak with folks up there about the importance of it, Raena?
I mean, I was at the State House last week, just advocating and lobbying, and there'll be some more work going on this week at the State House as well. I'll let him speak about that. But yeah, I feel like, a lot of senators and reps really support the bill. They understand what's going on in the community. So I don't think it's, a hard decision. We just have to have our fingers crossed about this.
Yeah, we'll definitely be making some time to go into the State House. We've been there already. We'll continue to go again next week. We will definitely be there on probably on Tuesday, just going in. The 12th, going in and letting our legislators know that it's something that we really desperately need. And like Raena said, for most part, our folks are receptive. We need them to take that receptiveness and turn it into action. So we'll be there rallying and letting them know, and we are hoping that they're going to make the right decision and push this forward. I
would hope so too, but I'm going to say this real quick is that I know that there have been calls for a reduction of the state gas tax, and there are state senators and state representatives who are receptive to it, but there are others going, that's just temporary. You're not hearing that from anybody, are you?
I haven't.
No, I definitely haven't heard it from many people. There are a number of senators and legislators that when we speak to them about a low-income fare, they're like, we know this will positively affect our constituents,
right.
Folks that have constituents in Lynn, like the Lynn commuter rail, it's pretty expensive. It's almost closer to $20 round trip if you have to go into Boston to work every day. How is that affordable, right? Folks that live in Brockton, that have constituents in Brockton, they're like, this is important for our constituents, and folks that for the RTAs that live in these gateway cities, and so they're like, this is what we need. So it's just a matter of getting everybody on the same page and going and moving forward with it.
And as coordinators, I think we both have our ears to the ground, and hearing what the people want. It rings bells. It's just really, really important that we make this happen.
Have you had a chance to talk with any of the leaders in the city to see if maybe some of their influences might help as well?
Absolutely. Like I said, I was at the State House last week doing some lobbying and brought it up to a few folks, Mike Brady in particular. But yeah, I think everybody, sees what's happening through the issues with COVID. Everything's been exacerbated, and we know that, rates have gone up in everything, including gas. And I think more folks are looking to utilize public transportation. And it's just unfortunate that this is happening, and it puts up another roadblock for working class families, low income families. And it's just something that we really have to see a little bit more clearer and have compassion about. It's an important piece of legislation.
This is definitely something that I know that some Boston City councilors have voiced their opinion on and have voiced their support for, in terms of making sure that it's low income fair and that folks have that public transit is accessible to the general public and everybody that needs it, especially for our folks that are lower income. So again, it's something that definitely has wide support from the people of Massachusetts, from the leadership, in our cities, and it just needs to get over the finish line.
Yeah, and I think if you do go down to the stations, you see that people aren't just going to work. They're going to doctor's appointments. See a lot of elderly people heading to their doctor's appointments in these stations. You see a lot of moms with their children following them, holding bags of groceries, and this is the image that we want to, get across to these folks, that, we rely solely on transportation in these communities. And in order for the world to work properly, this is just something that has to be accommodated.
I mean, for also things like we've talked about work, we've talked about doctor's appointments. There are folks that are trying to take the next step in their lives and figure out how to make changes. Like folks that are in group programs like Building Pathways, that are learning to going to the trades and figuring their licenses and stuff like that. They need this.
They do. I was with a young lady at the State House last week, and she was telling the senator a story about getting back and forth to school. She, unfortunately, her schedule has been cut, and so she can't take the later form of transportation. So she has to leave a little early. She can't stay after school to make sure that she gets good grades and whatnot. And on the way home, there's no sidewalk. To her home, and so she's walking in the streets and she's been called names and honked at, and it really gets dangerous for young folks, and we have to keep that in mind. We have to keep our community safe.
Definitely. Any final words before we say goodbye to our audience?
Like I said, this is just a really important piece in legislation, and it's important that you contact your governors, your senator, and your reps about Bill 4481. And it's definitely important to go to publictransitpublicgood.org to sign our petition and get the word out there.
Excellent.
Help us to make a change.
Anything in closing, Collique?
I think Raena said it all.
Well, I want to thank you both for being my guests.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Sharing this information with the folks, and hopefully folks will indeed reach out to their respective representatives and senators and even the governor's office and say that this is important, knowing that it costs so much money nowadays to buy a used car and be able to get affordable transportation, that this is definitely something that needs to
absolutely
be initiated.
And just thank you for having us on here. I could really appreciate you're always ahead of the game and bringing great information to the people. So thank you.
Definitely appreciate it, Kevin.
We want to thank you for tuning in. Hopefully you find this information important enough to reach out to the folks who can take action. We want to thank you for tuning in to a show like this Community Chat. And until next time, have yourself a great day.